like and subscribe right now, and you'll have amazing luck for an entire week. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at some of nature's most dangerous trees. Like this monkey-hating one. Or this one with beautiful bell-shaped flowers. But before we dive into those, let's talk about a tree that hit a poor unsuspecting man square in the noggin. Number 10. Bunya Pine. For something that has sustained life since the Mesozoic age, this tree is doing a scarily good job of lessening the population now. If you're unlucky enough to be under it when its pinecone falls, that is. The bunya pine isn't poisonous, nor does it have spikes littering its bark, but it's a 148-foot tall mammoth with 22 to 44-pound pine cones destined to fall. Never thought you'd hear the day someone could have their head cracked open from seeds, huh? And it isn't just theory, it's already happened. In San Francisco, a lawsuit for brain damage began after a man was struck by one of these pine cones in a park, which caused him severe head injuries. All he was doing at that time? Reading and napping under the pine tree, thinking it was a safe place to rest under its shade. His injury was so bad that surgeons had to remove part of his skull to relieve the swelling. The patient then suffered short-term memory loss with a prognosis that he would need long-term care. Yikes! Next time, I think I'd rather stay on a park bench instead. Number 9. Milky Mangrove. Not all mangrove trees are beloved. A particular class of theirs ooze out toxins harmful to humans, hence earning nicknames such as blinding tree and poisonfish tree. The milky mangrove's white, milky sap that flows from any damaged plant surface, be it from scratched bark or snapped branches, contains caustic chemicals. Once in contact with human skin, these chemicals cause irritation, swelling, and painful blisters. That's not all though. True to its name, this tree's sap can cause non-permanent blindness when it comes in contact with eye tissue. Well, at least it's non-permanent, right? That said, this species does have its uses. When its leaves have been dried and ground, the resulting powder can be spread on the water to immediately kill a multitude of fish or be used on poisoned darts. That isn't to say this tree isn't all about destruction though. It's been found to have various medicinal benefits as well, including treatment of epilepsy, ulcers, leprosy, rheumatism, and paralysis. But even knowing that, you won't find me filling a jar with this stuff. I'd instead leave it to the professionals. Number 8. Strychnine tree. Some of you may have heard of the poison strychnine, one of the more popular toxins at the start of the 20th century. What you might not know is that it wasn't concocted in a laboratory. Instead, this poison was created naturally by a tree. The strychnine tree is a species native to Southeast Asia and India. Despite its deceptive facade, what with its thick leaves and ordinary-looking branches, this tree carries dollar-like seeds which are the source of the strychnine poison. But just what is this that makes it so fearsome? A victim could be dead within 10 to 20 minutes with the correct dose. It sounds like a relatively quick and painless way to die, but I assure you, research says otherwise. If ingested, the poison causes eye pain, dizziness, muscle cramping, paralysis, and a heavy tongue. Thankfully, there are now effective treatments against strychnine due to modern medicine, leaving this murder weapon a thing of the past for old-timey detective novels and shows. Also, despite its toxicity, it's been found that this plant has medical applications for cancer treatment. Kind of a redeeming quality, isn't it? Number 7. Sandbox tree. Monkey see, monkey shouldn't do. That's right, this spiky tree is one that monkeys, or humans, should never attempt to touch, much more climb. This tree that can grow up to 200 feet tall is all around dangerous. Covering it are numerous spikes laced with sap known to be a threat to humans. Touch that thing and you'd be covered in rashes the next thing you know. Guys, the Caribs literally poison arrowheads with it. Not only that, but once its pumpkin-looking fruit dries, the pod explodes into loads of shrapnel, sending the seeds in all directions at 160 miles an hour or more. That means some serious injuries for those unfortunate enough to have been within the plant's radial distance when the fruits become ripe. For that reason, people also call it the dynamite tree, which sounds pretty cool. Speaking of names, let's talk about why this is called sandbox tree. Before modern pens were invented, the unripe seed capsules were sawn in half to make decorative pen sandboxes, which others may know better as pounce pots. Huh, go figure. I wonder if any craftsmen had any incidents while grabbing their material. Number 6. European yew. This tree, primarily grown to be ornamental, is actually poisonous. It's so deadly that even if you as much as inhale a small amount of the toxin, you'd die. Uh-oh. Yews contain many poisonous compounds, including at least 10 alkaloids, nitriles, and ephedrine. If any of the leaves or seeds of this plant get ingested, urgent medical care is needed. From there, the patient would be under observation for at least 6 hours from the moment of ingestion. It kind of makes you feel like a lab rat, huh? However, getting poisoned by this tree is not just through one method. Its toxin could also be absorbed efficiently through the skin. It's so bad that even if the plant material has been dried for months, its toxicity will still remain. A lethal dose from this tree is reported to be at least 50 grams. Despite resuscitation efforts, those who would have swallowed that much would usually die from cardiogenic shock. Sadly, there are currently no antidotes for yew poisoning, though there are drugs that could be used to treat some symptoms. Honestly, it makes me wonder why people keep growing this thing then. Number 5. Angel's Trumpet. For something with such a beautiful and graceful name, this plant shares tropane alkaloids with some of the more notorious shrubberies such as jimsonweed and belladonna, otherwise known as the deadly nightshade. Would I go as far as to say any dose of this would send you meeting their namesakes, though? Yeah, if misused. Now listen, before any of you have any ideas, do not handle these flowers unless you know what you're doing. It's true that it's been used medicinally, mostly externally, as part of a poultice or ointment for aches and pains, dermatitis, and even headaches. Still, the fact remains that all aspects of it are dangerous. It's rich in several toxins that ingestion could do all sorts of damage, such as paralysis, tachycardia, constipation, delusions, and even death. Not only that, but they're strong hallucinogenics. According to a report in Psychiatry and Clinical Neuroscience, a young man who drank 1 cup of Angel's Trumpet tea amputated his own penis and tongue. Yikes! So, unless you want to run the risk of doing that too, I highly suggest you do not come into contact with an Angel's Trumpet. Number 4. Manchineel Tree. You know that story of how Snow White died after eating a poisoned apple? Yeah, I'm sure I know what kind of tree that apple came from. Introducing the Manchineel Tree. It's so notorious as the world's most poisonous tree, people hang warning signs on them, reminding others not to get close to it. Other times, folks are so careful that they paint a red line around it instead. But how deadly is this tree? Well, its sap contains lots of toxins that can cause blistering, but unlike the milky mangrove we talked about earlier, this sap can be found on every surface of this tree. That's right, it covers the bark, leaves, and even the fruit. Standing under it in the rain would only mean your skin is on the way to suffering from bullous dermatitis and acute keratoconjunctivitis. As for the fruit, or rather, the little apple of death as it's called, consumption would lead to severe gastroenteritis with bleeding, shock, and bacterial superinfection. Not only that, but there's a potential for your airway to get compromised from fluid retention. Terrifying, considering reports that state its flavor is, quote, pleasantly sweet. As curious as a person I am, that is one flavor I'd rather not. Number 3. Shipworm Tree. Ugh, I'm getting goosebumps just looking at this one. Unlike the other trees on this list, what makes this dangerous to the touch isn't because of some inherent poison found within its sap or fruit, but rather the things that decide to live in it. Shipworms. Shipworms, also called termites of the sea, drill their long, naked bodies into wood that happens to be immersed in seawater. As you can guess, that means it can also bore into wooden structures such as piers, docks, and even ships. That is not good. Because of this ability, back in the 18th century, these things conquered the seas. By that, I mean they sank ships. You heard that right. Compared to everything else in the water, these tiny things used to sink ships. You're probably thinking, but they look so soft, how is that possible? Despite being called worms, they're actually a type of clam. On one end of their bodies, they have a pair of tiny shells that they use for digging. Patient, aren't they? These days, though, don't worry too much about them because in certain countries, these mollusks are considered exotic delicacies. Yay? Number 2. Dragon Blood Tree. Don't worry, the Dracana cinnabari, or the dragon blood tree, isn't actually dangerous. It's the opposite. It just looks like it'd kill you because of its vermilion sap. Yep, you weren't honestly expecting dragon blood to come out of it, did you? This odd tree has been economically imported for centuries. Local people of Yemen in the Socotra archipelago value it as food for livestock thanks to its berries. No, we don't mean it produces loads and loads of fruit that's basically free meals for the farm animals 24/7, but should a cow or goat be sickly, a few samples of the fruit could improve their health right away. Farmers have to be careful though, because too much could lead the animal back to poor health. The berry isn't the only medicinal thing about this tree though. The resin itself is believed to have therapeutic properties commonly used to facilitate the healing of wounds. Others use it as blood thinners or as an antipyretic. Sadly, the future of this tree is uncertain. Few are regenerating naturally, with younger trees lacking the iconic umbrella shape, and climate change is Cerbella odollam. For true crime lovers out there, add this to your knowledge arsenal. The Cerbella odollam, also called the suicide tree, has been used in more suicides than any other plant. Yup, even more than the strychnine tree. Native to India and other parts of Southern Asia, the seeds of this tree contain a toxin called cerberin. This toxin is highly potent and disrupts the function of your heart, which, would be fatal. What makes this a choice is because its flavor can be easily disguised in food. That makes this toxin criminally overlooked by medical examiners, causing some experts to call this poison the perfect weapon. Want to know how many people have fallen to it? Between 1989 and 1999, Cerbella odollam took more than 500 lives in Kerala alone. In case you do eat this mango-looking fruit, run to the nearest hospital. Its symptoms include burning mouth sensations, vomiting, headache, irregular heartbeats, and breathing difficulties. If you don't make it in time, you may be in a coma. Worst case scenario, you're added to the death toll of this monster tree.